Today's episode sponsor is Meter. Meter delivers full-stack networking infrastructure from wired to wireless to cellular in a single integrated solution that scales from branch offices, warehouses, and large campuses to data centers. Go to meter.com/heavystrategy to book a demo now. That's meter.com/heavystrategy to book a demo.
Hi, I'm Jonna Johnson, CEO of Nemertes, here with my co-host,
John Burke, CTO of Nemertes.
And you are listening to Heavy Strategy, the show that tries to ask the right questions, not give the right answers. And today, we would like to discuss what questions you should be asking yourself about existential risks to your organization. Very specifically, how do you discuss these threats with leadership in a way that allows you to get the resources you need to address the risks that are real while not being blown off as being a catastrophist or, underselling real risks? And John, I know you have some thoughts on this, so why don't you kick it off?
And I really can't emphasize enough that it's crucial to be very realistic in your approach to this. You can't be Chicken Little and always go to leadership saying the sky is falling. Not every threat is an existential threat. And so step one, in my estimation, is understanding what kind of cybersecurity vulnerabilities could actually lead to the company shutting down.
Or any other vulnerabilities, I would add. I mean, power outages, data centers getting swept away by hurricanes, et cetera.
Sure. Failure of disaster planning, that's the A in CIA, right? Availability. Got to have it. But yes, really keeping an eye on what could do it. And I think that a lot of us on the inside of things have always thought that corporations were ultimately more vulnerable to this stuff than they actually are at an existential level. So we've seen companies go through enormous, seismic data breaches, for example, and basically shrug it off and keep on doing business unaffected. And the examples, range from healthcare organizations to like the folks who do your FICO scores, all sorts of folks for whom confidentiality is supposed to be the sine qua non. Their data gets stolen and things just keep on chugging along. No big deal. At the same time, I'm sorry,
okay.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, before we move forward, I want to circle back on a couple of terms that you like to use because I think they're important. When we talk about existential threats, I think people get that confused with existential dread and sort of view it as like big and scary and gloomy and nebulous. Just to be clear, an existential threat is a threat to your existence or your organization's existence. If thing X happens, you no longer exist. So that's a very narrow category of threats in the scheme of things. It's not take a hit, everybody's bonuses are bad for a year, you have to lay off a bunch of people. That's not necessarily an existential collapse. An existential collapse is you don't exist anymore.
The giant dinosaur killing asteroid was an existential problem for the dinosaurs, but it was only a blip for the mammals.
Exactly.
So it varies by company.
And the other term on this that I like that you use, John, is bricking the company.
There you go. Very
that's an existential
for the IT
threat.
folks.
Yeah, an existential threat is a threat that bricks the company.
And so data breaches basically don't seem to fall into this category anymore. Even companies, as I said, that are built on the idea of the privacy and protected nature of their data, whether it's a credit rating agency or Ashley Madison, major data breaches, brushed it off, moved on, continued to do business.
I don't know that they ever did, though, John. I don't think they ever were a problem.
They were definitely more of a problem earlier on. You would at least take a bigger stock hit and a bigger dip in your business as things got sorted out. But again, you just kept chugging along and people eventually came back. However, other kinds of breaches have led to companies actually shutting down. Probably the one folks would be most familiar with would be Travelex, which if you ever traveled through airports and needed to get money for a foreign country, Travelex was your currency exchange point in a lot of major airports. And they had a major data breach in 2020. It was a ransomware attack. So A, their data got stolen, and B, their access to their data got cut off. And because they were not practicing good backup and restore, because they tried to pay the ransom and pick up business again, they only partially recovered and eventually went out of business. They went into bankruptcy and then folded. So these things can happen, do happen. Every year or two, a company gets driven out of business, more globally. More than that, I'm sure, are distressed enough financially that they go into a merger or acquisition they would otherwise not have had to, but I can't, say how many or how big. I have this gut feeling based on the smaller examples that it is.
Well, you have some examples like Dubsmash, you said, had ended up having to be sold in 2018. And Codespaces, you said, went out of business in 2014. Discord in 2023, Metasecure, you said that was an Australian company, and National Public Data, both in 2024. So, these are not hypotheticals, right, John? These are real companies that just went poof.
Yes, absolutely. And I seem to remember, too, there was one of the pipeline companies out east, New England Pipeline or whatever, that got hit with that big attack, 6 years ago now. They had to sell. Their assets became so distressed they couldn't stay in operation as an independent company.
So basically, I think the first message seems to be there are such things as existential cybersecurity threats, and there is such a thing as bricking the company because it has happened. So don't be too comfortable that, worst case, you take a stock hit and keep chugging, as you put it. There are real ones, so let's talk about what those real ones might be. And John, I think you said that step one is really starting to have a meaningful discussion about what these could possibly be, like what kind of outage, over what time frame.
Exactly.
What are some of the questions people should be asking?
So like you think back to Travelex as an example, they were cut off from access to their data and couldn't restore it quickly or completely. And ask yourself, how long can we continue to do the business we're doing, whatever your business is, without access to our data at the desktop level, on our servers, for our web services? And
so lack of access to data is one threat. What else?
Having your hardware bricked. I toss the word bricked around freely, but if outsiders can come in and basically disable your network at a physical level, so you have to yank and replace network switches, so you have to yank and replace servers or storage appliances before you can restore operations, then you've got a level of threat to your operations, and you have to ask how long you can sustain it, and can you restore operations by alternate means in that time window? Is your time to recover shorter than your time to bankruptcy?
And yes, and I think the time frame is kind of the next step, but I think some other things to think about is getting cut off from your cloud services, whether by network failure, by equipment failure, or by action of the cloud providers themselves. We talked about the Indian company that Microsoft just cut off all of its services. If that happens, can you continue to function? Are you the sort of company that can continue to function? And if you're the sort of company that has OT or IoT, have a heavy dependence on OT or IoT, your manufacturing plants going dark is obviously an existential threat.
Or having all your industrial robots bricked. That would be a good one too.
Yeah, that would be an existential threat. And I think the other thing, and I'm going to keep hammering on this, is be careful about using the term. We use it. We like to toss it around because we know what it means and we're comfortable with it. I think a lot of senior executives really don't know the difference between existential dread and existential threat. So they don't understand that you're talking about a catastrophic company ending event.
I think company ending is probably the least threatening, most accessible term that you can use. Yeah, company
right.
ending.
And that sort of that gets across that you're talking about something that's very severe without trying to be melodramatic about it.
And you mentioned cloud services and being cut off from them, but it's also important to remember that it's not just your physical servers in your data centers or edge facilities that can be bricked. Cloud servers, physical infrastructures can suffer attacks as well. More importantly, your stuff in their environments can suffer attacks. And that was actually one of the key problems with the code spaces example. They had attacks that first compromised stuff in their AWS space and then used that to attack other stuff in their AWS space and other stuff in their AWS space until their entire AWS infrastructure, including redundant copies in other regions, was compromised and then essentially encrypted and made unavailable to them entirely. And there was no backup outside those regional copies. Because it was all done within the same AWS account, compromising the AWS account at the highest level gave the attackers access to absolutely everything that they had, put them out of business.
Yeah, so those are some good examples. I think once you've sort of talked through what some of the examples might be, I think a real question you have to ask yourself is how possible or likely is such an occurrence? And, it's not just the sort of physical or technical likelihood of something happening. It's also, you also have to get into the realm of subjectivity. Would a nation state attack could do this? Are you somewhere in the supply chain to someone for whom a nation state attack might be attractive? So in other words, obviously, if you're the NSA, you're the target of a nation state attacks, probably 1,100 of them before lunch, right? But you may be a provider of motherboards to a company that then manufactures servers that then gets sold to the NSA, and you may be vulnerable to a nation state attack. So you have to look at both what you do yourself and who your customers are and who your suppliers are, and see if taking you out has corollary impact on somebody either up or down the supply chain that might make it worthwhile for somebody to target you.
And not just nation state actors, I heartily concur on them, but also extranational threat actors, whether affiliated with a nation state or not, but politically motivated typically rather than criminally motivated. That's another
I was using that as an example. Yeah.
And then, of course, criminally motivated folks who just want the money, or they want to use your platform as a base from which to do other criminal things to other people. And I suppose you could be sued out of existence by the people whose stuff was compromised by the folks nesting in your infrastructure. I haven't seen it happen yet, but it seems to me it's likely. What I'm going to say, though, is that all of our estimations of likelihoods are likely to be thrown into disarray in the next year or two as the unfolding of large language model, Gen AI, reasoning models, and all of the evolution of AIs get fully internalized by the black market for cybersecurity threats. Whether it's discovering more vulnerabilities or, basically mass producing the compromises that are necessary. And instead of being forced by scarcity of human intelligence to focus your attacks on specific companies by industry, by size, by location, by whatever criterion, you can just spam the world and hit everything that's potentially vulnerable, and all simultaneously, all fully mechanized. It will change the probabilities of companies experiencing every kind of cyber attack, including the company killing ones.
Exactly. And yeah, just to be clear, I was using nation states as an example. They can be many others, but the risk of AI and AI in the hands of any kind of attacker is large and growing. One of the things you have to remember is as well, even though, let me put it this way, even though our cybersecurity vendors and service providers are using AI as cleverly as they can to defend you, the problem is it's asymmetric warfare, because just by the very nature of AI spits out a lot of junk and spits out a lot of very useful things. And if you're an attacker, the fact that you're spitting out junk, attacks that don't work, doesn't matter because all you need is one attack that does work. Whereas it's reversed if you're defending. You have to defend at 100% of the time. If you miss 0.01% of the time, there's your company ending event potentially. And
it's also asymmetrical in that they can attack everybody pretty much anytime they want, but everybody doesn't work together to repel the attacks. It's everyone essentially for themselves, the way things work right now.
Yeah. So as much as I think a lot of things are exaggerated when we talk about AI, this is not one of them. The risk that the cybersecurity and other risks that it poses, because even at a high level, you can think about, you can go to an LLM and say, give me 57 new ideas for attacking company X. If your goal is to put a company X out of business, you don't even have to be a cybersecurity expert. They can come in and say, hey, they're dependent functionally on this particular energy station. If you take that out, it's going to take 36 hours to get that back in production. And during that 36 hours, that's long enough for the company to experience a company ending event, for example. And so whoever it is that's attacking may not have thought of that. Now, that's an obvious example. For very clear reasons, I'm not going to give you unobvious examples. But
also
AI,
consider that there's no downside to trying something that doesn't work for them.
Exactly.
They can keep throwing spaghetti at the wall all day. And if any of it sticks, that's to the good.
But the main thing here is they're not limited to cyber attacks.
Oh, yeah.
Your cyber defense is limited to cyber defense. You can't all of a sudden, call up the energy station and say, oh, by the way, I need you to, bolster your defenses. You can't do that. So they have many more dimensions that they can operate in to plan their attacks. And then, of course, they don't have to, it doesn't matter how many unsuccessful attacks they throw at you. They only need one to be successful. So
that's true. Yep.
So
I'll just echo the point one more different way, which is to say, anytime you reach for your cell phone, look at it and think, gosh, I hope no nation state actors have decided that my phone needs to blow up. And keep in mind that it's been done, and if it's been done once, it'll be done a different way another time.
In fairness, those were pagers. In fairness, those were pagers. But
agreed. In fairness,
a laptop can make a nice bomb, which is, by the way, something the TSA has been well aware of since 9/11, but chooses not to act on because telling customers they can't bring their laptops on board planes is a non-starter. But they do make lovely bombs. That lithium battery can do all sorts of fun things. So, just to give you the idea that there are all sorts of things that can be done. So basically, the challenge that's facing anyone who is involved in risk, cyber risk, or disaster planning is to think about all the things that might be company ending events, think about how likely they are, and then think about how to talk about mitigation for them with senior executives. And, John, I know you and I have both worked as senior executives and also as people who advise those who speak to senior executives. And I would say one of the biggest challenges is the whole concept of an executive summary isn't a joke. Executives are super busy. Their attention is being pulled in 9,000 different directions. So you need to figure out a way to frame your discussion in a fashion that isn't alarmist because they'll write you off, but is at the same time alarmist enough to get their attention so that perhaps they might devote another 5 minutes or possibly another few hours to listening to what you have in mind.
We're pausing for a quick word from sponsor Meter. Meter delivers full-stack networking, wired, wireless, and cellular to leading enterprises. It's a single integrated solution with everything included, and I mean everything. ISP procurement, security, routers, switches, wireless APs, firewalls, cellular, power, DNS security, VPN, SD-WAN, and multi-site workflows. Meter has designed the hardware, written the firmware, and built the software. It's a truly integrated solution. And alongside their partners, Meter designs, deploys, and manages everything required at your site or sites so that you get performant, reliable, and secure connectivity. If you're ready for fast, secure, and scalable connectivity without the complexity of managing multiple providers or tools, it's time to check out Meter. Go to meter.com/heavystrategy to book a demo now. That's meter.com/heavystrategy to book a demo. Thanks to Meter for being a sponsor. And now back to the podcast.
So what are some best practices there, John? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, as you say, time's limited, attention spans are limited. People's ability to absorb facts and new concepts often required in a cybersecurity discussion, at least the first time it comes up, also very limited. They're cramming their heads with all sorts of other things during the kinds of meetings where you get to talk about this stuff. So serious summarization, detail is always available. You can drill in on request, but keep the high level high, clear, consistent. Use the same words from week to week or month to month or quarter to quarter. Whoever you're discussing it with, however often you get to discuss it, use a consistent vocabulary and repeat, not in a, apply directly to the forehead kind of a way, but in a have a Merry Christmas kind of a way. Repeat across and within reports the stuff that's most important, the attacks that interlink with each other, the vulnerabilities that interlink with each other, the defenses that address the broadest range of threats and vulnerabilities. Those kinds of things should be your focus. Go ahead.
Let me jump in there, John, because I think it's important to, number one, make clear what kinds of company ending events there might be. Number two, which ones are most probable and signal that you're going to talk about the most probable ones. And number three is what to do about it. So you don't want to keep repeating scary, 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 company ending, company ending, company ending. You need to have thought through and say, okay, our remediation for this is get consulting support, get a managed service provider, get this product, get a redundant source of energy. Whatever you've worked out are the solutions. And those are the things that need to be repeated gently. But why are we spending all this money? Because there is a non-negligible chance of a company ending result if we don't.
And if company ending doesn't have the resonance necessary, consider implying at least career ending. Career ending for people at the C-level. You'll never see board members tossed out for failing to take leadership on this, but you will see C-level executives from time to time tossed out. I mean, CISOs are typically considered the sort of ablative tiling of the space shuttle that is the typical enterprise. On re-entry during some kind of cyber event, they're what burns off and makes sure the rest of it gets down to the ground safely. But, that's not always going to be the case. Getting fired or losing your job for that reason is not as frequent as it used to be. Although CISOs still have a pretty short tenure, it's shifting to being because of burnout and overload and just stress than breaches causing resignations. You don't see a 1-for-1 anymore on big breach equals CISO resigning.
Yeah, I would be cautious though on the career ending because as much as we like to think we've distanced ourselves from this, we still have kind of the old, 19th century military structure in our heads with a chain of command. And people who are subordinates should not be talking to their bosses about, you might not have your job, because that triggers almost unconscious resentment. Like, how the hell do you know whether I'm going to keep my job or not? If you knew so much about my job, you'd have my job already. So it depends on your relationship with your senior leadership, whether or not you want to pull out the career ending thing. That's why I kind of prefer focusing on company ending, because you can say we're all focused on the good of the company, everyone from the janitor to the CEO.
Yeah, and if you play the audio back, you'll hear I did say imply, because I would never come right out and say, you're going to lose your job if this happens.
But even implying it, it's sort of like it may raise hackles a bit, depending on who the person is and how hierarchical they are. because it feels like a threat, frankly, and nobody likes to be threatened by their subordinates. It's like your kid telling you you're going to get fired. Like, what do you know about it?
I don't know. If somebody comes and inspects your house and says, this wiring is going to cause a house fire sooner or later, do you feel threatened by that person?
But that's not personal. That is, this organization faces a threat.
Exactly.
In this case, the organization is the house. So it's not career ending, it is company ending or house ending. That's what I'm getting at is it's not personal. Focus on the shared goal of let's all keep this house standing, let's all keep this organization running, and not make it about the career of anyone. But that said, it's a possibility.
And a company ender ends everybody's career, so there's the implication right there.
Actually, it doesn't. That's the main thing.
No,
many people.
If it does end the company, the career is gone, at least at that company.
Well, no, the job is gone. The career continues. And that's the other reason. People get hired. People, for heaven's sakes. And
sure.
The best possible way to get another job is
career at the company. Yes.
Right. Exactly. Course. So I do think it's best to keep an emphasis on the organization that you're part of. But, if you have a good, warm working relationship with your senior executives, throwing it a touch of you might get fired doesn't hurt. I think also being very clear that you're not trying to be alarmist. So I think it's really important to bolster and justify your claim that a certain event is company ending or potentially company ending. And it's totally okay to defer to senior executives on the likelihood because they may know stuff you don't know. So you can say, here's a thing. It could end the company, and they could say, we have mitigated against this in 15 different ways, none of which have anything to do with IT or even broader disaster recovery. They may have partnerships or, some financial stuff in the air. That's cool. And you should assume that they're doing their jobs and thinking about it, but your job is to raise the issue, highlight the importance of the issue, highlight that in your best estimate, it is at least a non-negligible likelihood, and then move on to a discussion about remediation.
Yep. And those practical approaches to remediation are going to be crucial to something productive coming out of discussing potential company enders.
Right. Because your senior executives want to know, what can I do about it? Exactly. And I think the other thing is to recognize that there's always going to be an implicit ROI. And that we as technologists or even disaster recovery planners are not necessarily the best people to develop the ROI. If you're going to spend more to remediate a risk than the company's worth, well, that is unlikely to happen. Let's put it that way.
Exactly.
And so, these are all some things to think about. I think another thing, and John, you have stressed this many times with me, is keep it as simple as possible, but no simpler. So, don't dumb it down so the person feels condescended to, but at the same time, don't assume they understand some random cybersecurity or risk acronym that comes from the framework you've been up to your eyeballs in for the past 18 months. Yeah?
Or even the nitty-gritty about some of the company's own operations outside IT or cybersecurity. Again, looking at a factory or manufacturer with a lot of factories, and you're finding out that a bunch of their OT stuff is vulnerable to compromise, and all those assembly line robots could be bricked. Okay, so they may not understand the details of those things being on networks, talking to controllers outside the factory, but in some edge facility, a whole bunch of operational stuff that's fundamental to how the company now does business, that they may not be up on enough of the details of to have any intuitive feeling for the vulnerability. It's not like you can say, well, somebody could just break in and hit it with a sledgehammer. So you need to, yes, find a simple, direct, but correct explanation of why this vulnerability is now of such high level of concern. It's not just that those things are there, it's that the mitigation is expensive, and the backup plan, which is to have more equipment roll in to replace the bricked stuff, well, the lead time on a machine is 6 months. So are we going to wait 6 months for all these operational things to get replaced? Okay. Do we have that in the bank? I don't know. That's their stuff. But
right.
But your
And
stuff
by the way, if you wish me to
know,
buy laptops 6 months in advance or equipment 6 months in advance as a mitigation, so that we have a backlog, that could work too. But
and lastly,
yes.
cyber insurance. It is still a thing that exists in this world and people still pay for it, but it pays for less and less and depends on more and more from you as documented behavior of good cybersecurity hygiene and mitigations in advance. So don't be thinking that their answer to most of these things is, oh, well, we've got cyber insurance and you should just let it go at that. Understand the details of your company's cybersecurity insurance coverage if that's possible for you, so that you can intelligently address that as a counter argument. Well, that's why we've got insurance. Well, yes, but we're in the business of supplying things to defense contractors, which makes us a target for nation state attacks, which have typically fallen under the force majeure clauses of insurance policies in the past, meaning they don't pay out. So we really need to think beyond the insurance policy.
Yes, I would also say, back to keeping things simple, your best bet is to paint a picture or describe a scenario with a kind of you are there.
Yes.
Like, dear boss, imagine if you woke up one morning, went to your grand tour where they're going to be ribbon cutting at the new manufacturing plant, and everything was dead silent. Everyone was gathered outside. The building was locked. The power was out. Nobody could get in. Someone's imagination can go there very quickly. If you need a picture to help it along, you can do that. Then back up and say, this could be caused by, and then go into it. Obviously, you don't want to do this for each and every one of, 50 items in a risk register. But if you can get the idea across so it's visceral, use narrative, use a you are there, use pictures. I have a client that created a brilliant presentation justifying another data center using rock music and jets that took off. So whatever you need to do to paint that picture without being melodramatic, but make it real, I think that is incredibly helpful, because one of the things that's hard to really realize when you're in the business of dealing with risk is that you're yanking everybody else out of their almost hypnotized work routine. So and I can tell you this exists as a CEO. Something happens and I'm like, okay, this is a problem. I need to deal with it. Problems come, they get dealt with. That's my job. And it almost starts to feel like you're playing tennis or ping pong. Bip, bop, bip, bop. And what you're trying to say is, the tennis court just blew up because an asteroid hit it, right?
Yep.
That's kind of the level you're bringing to them. So you do want to use a way to grab their attention that is not over melodramatic, but gets across the idea that this is a sharp break from normal operations.
And this is a place where tabletop exercises, aka war games, can come in very handy if you have the ability to engage upper leadership in such an exercise. Having them live action participate in the unfolding of an event like that can drive the point home even further.
Yep. And I would be remiss not to mention that Nemertes does a very good job with those war games. Obviously, you can put together war games yourself, but we do that for a living. That's one of the many things we offer our clients. So if you're interested in some support in this, give us a holler. And this is probably a good place to kind of wrap up the show and let folks know where to reach us if they want to give us a holler. John, where should folks reach out to you?
Well, I live a little bit in LinkedIn every day these days. So I'm John Burke on LinkedIn. Of course, there are probably 10,000 of us. So search for John Burke Nemertes and you'll find me. I'm also shifting some operations over onto Substack. So stay tuned to the Nemertes Substack.
Exactly. You can always go to nemertes.substack.com and there should be information on how to reach us. You can reach us online, and we will be happy to talk your ear off about how to do effective war gaming and anything else you want to do.
Thanks for joining us today. If you've got feedback or a follow-up for us on this topic, send us a message at packetpushers.net/follow-up. In fact, we'd love to hear from you about any of the episodes we've done or your own experiences and stuff that you think it'd be great to talk about. Also at packetpushers.net, you'll find the Network Break podcast, which helps you stay current on the latest tech news and what it means. Very relevant as you grapple with the issues of IT strategy and which way to head. There's a whole lot more on the Packet Pushers site as well, including many other tech and networking podcasts and our newsletters.
We look forward to hearing from you.